Today we're going to talk about the knit contour. Now the knit contour is what came with the Singer, Silver Reed, and I believe some of the Toyota style machines. The knit radar, which came with the brother machines, is similar, but I'm sure that there are some differences. So don't take this as canon if you're using a knit radar. You can, however, reference your manual if something seems to not be working quite right, and your manual can help you through any difficulties. But for the most part, we're going to be focusing on the knit contour. Now, before you start, you want to do that thing that every hand knitter hates doing, which is make a swatch. Okay, it's very, very important. You actually cannot use your knit contour if you don't have numbers to feed it. Because the whole thing works on the numbers from your swatch. Now, on this particular type of machine, your swatch is made in a very specific way, and that is so that your ruler works appropriately. You cannot use just any old ruler to do this. You need the one that came with it. I believe in the files section in the beginner's circle, there is a download file to download printouts of these rulers, which you could then laminate, put on cardstock, and use. With that in mind, make sure that you have the ruler that goes with your machine. They are different colors, different styles, depending on the machine and the pattern processing unit that you're using. I use a Singer 360K, and as some of you know, it's kind of my daily driver. Yes, I have other machines, but I always seem to go back to it, and the reason why is the knit contour. Now, while my Passet does have a form computer, and I've used it, I don't like it as much. It does the exact same thing, but there's something about the patterns and the visual way that this works that I enjoy. Now, when you make your swatch, do it by the manual. If you don't have your manual, go download it. It is available out there. You just have to look for it. And if you can't find it, ask for help. Somebody either has it and is willing to give you the appropriate directions, or they may even be willing to scan it and send it to you. This community is wonderful that way. Never be afraid to ask for help. That is what this group is all about. Now, for my purposes, I'm not going to tell you how to make the swatch because it's going to be different depending on the machine that you have. But the apparatus itself generally works the same. Now, when you're measuring your swatch, your ruler is going to have an S on one side and an arrow pointing towards the right, and an R on one side and that arrow pointing towards the right. The R stands for rows, the S stands for stitches. We're going to start with rows here. And I've done my swatch a little bit different than the manual says. I'm not completely breaking the rules, I'm just making my life a little bit easier. If you follow the manual, you're going to have 2 rows of waste yarn in here, and that's going to be your start point. I cast on and bind off in waste yarn, and the edge of the waste yarn is just my start point. Now, when you're processing your swatch, everybody's going to tell you to block it, to steam it, to iron it, to do all of these things. Here's the deal, okay? You want to treat your swatch in the way that you're going to treat your final garment. If you're not going to iron your sweater, then don't iron your swatch. If you're going to take that sweater and you're going to toss it in the washing machine, you're going to toss it in the dryer, and then you're going to put it on a hanger, treat your swatch the same way, okay? Put it in the washing machine, put it in the dryer, and then take your measurements. The big thing is letting your swatch relax before you do that. Because the machine stretches the stitches way, way out, it needs a little time to kind of shrink back in and for the yarn to settle. I usually give mine 24 hours. Some people don't have that much patience. I completely understand. I tend to do a whole bunch of swatches at once, let them relax overnight, and then come back in the morning and treat them in the way they need to be treated. Now, this one was a superwash wool, so it did, in fact, just go in the washing machine and then into the dryer, which is why the edges are still a little bit curled. And that's okay. I'm not dealing with the edges in the swatch, so they can curl all they want. As long as they're not curling all the way back to my yarn marks, I really don't care. So starting with the rows, we're going to line that up on the edge and go all the way up to the top. Now, the thing here is to try and keep your ruler straight. You're going to get a very different reading if you're tilted to the side. And I'd like to say that you can use the row that you're leaning up against but that doesn't always work either. Sometimes your yarn biases and it skews a little to the left or the right, or if you've pinned it out, you may have a section that didn't get pinned appropriately and therefore it skews. So visually, try and keep your ruler straight. Now, this one comes out right a smidge below 47. So I'm actually going to use 48 for this measurement. Then on the other side, you're going to flip the ruler over and you're going to measure from the inside leg to the inside leg. Now again, you kind of want to keep this straight. However, what may happen is when you're straight, you may lose one of your yarn marks under the ruler if you've got a little biasing going on, and that's obviously what I have going on in this swatch. So it's okay to just slide that ruler down a little bit until you can see it. Just try and keep everybody straight. Don't move too much to the left or to the right, because then you're going to skew your whole thing. Now, you really want to measure the inside leg of this, but I'm in between the numbers. 31 is actually on the outside leg. 32 is just a smidge over. So I'm going to use the 32 with the mental understanding that it wasn't an exact measurement. I was a little off. And you can kind of play with that while you're working. So 32 and 48 is what I have. Now, what do those numbers mean? What are you doing with those? Well, that second number for stitches, that 32, has to do with these stitch scales. You should have a set of these that came with your machine. And these are numbered 0 to 12 or 13, depending on the actual scale that you're working with. Now, this is the one for 32, and I know that because there's a big, bold 32 on the edge of it. And if you flip it over and look at the other side, this is the one for 31. Now, because my measurement was a 32, I know that that's the one that I'm going to use. These numbers are neither in centimeters nor inches. These numbers actually represent how many stitches you're going to have in play based on where the line on the pattern falls. So once you know which one of these you need, you can just pull it out, set it to the side. So there are two types of scales. I showed you the standard scales. There are also what are known as center scales. Center scales have a 0 right in the middle, and then they're numbered either side of 0, much like your machine. These patterns are generally pants, because pants have a different shaping on the front and the back, and a different shaping from, say, the center seam that goes up the center of your abdomen out to the leg. So these are designed to be able to have different numbers on either side of 0. How do you tell which one you need? You can tell that simply by looking at the pattern. The one that I have laying here has this line that goes all the way down the middle. That requires a center scale. This is actually a pair of pants. Now, this other one that I have sitting just out of camera view does not have that center line down the actual pattern. Now, if you look at the top, you'll see that there is in fact a line here. That line is to help you line up your pattern when you're putting it in the machine. But this is not a center scale pattern.